All right. So, with great pleasure, I want to invite Ms. Sunetra Chaudhary, Editor National Affairs Ndtv, for this talk on That's Why I'm a Journalist. Sunetra anchors a daily audience-based show called Agenda on NDTV, which is the only out-of-studio show of its kind and a primetime show on student leaders and elections. Sunetra Chaudhary started her career in journalism at the Indian Express in 1999. In 2002, she joined the launch team of Star News, a Hindi 24-hour news channel. A year later, she joined NDTV's National Bureau. Her first book, Breaking News, published in 2010, is a product of her travels during the 2009 election campaign, covering 15,000 kilometers across the country. Behind Bars, Prison Tales of India's most famous, another book published in 2017 is her latest book. Sunetra is the recipient of a Red Ink Award 2016 for her story on how Indians were adopting disabled children. I'm extremely fortunate that she has taken time to be part of this conversation. I do believe that it's journalists like her are inspiring the young people to make those choices. I also want to mention that we somehow have this extraordinary link with NDTV. We have never been able to get out of the NDTV umbilical cord that seemed to have been connected with us, but there is a reason for it. And I told this to Dr. Prannoy Roy when I met him a few months ago, that unlike most Indian sort of television corporations, NDTV is not a corporation, it's more like an institution. And because of its pioneering and vanguard role that it played in pretty much establishing TV journalism in the country, we are very fortunate that we have all these people come together. It's almost like, tell me your friend, who's your friend, and I'll tell about you. That's the kind of friends we have got who have come together, and Sunetra is one of NDTV's. So with that, I invite Sunetra to give her a talk. That's why I'm a journalist.
And Raj, if I can just add to that, Sunetra is one of the best investigative journalists in the country today. I will have you know. Her book is outstanding. And you beat me to it. I had planned to call her for a lecture to the class.
Thank you all so much. And, I'm just wondering here, if you have Kishalai, if you have Maya, if you have Kajari, all my old colleagues, why it is you need me to tell you why I'm a journalist. And I was thinking about that while I came in and I saw you all, but then I think I have it figured out. I think Kishalai, there's a reason why Kishalai asked me to speak here. Because, when I was at the stage you're in journalism school, starting out, I was the only one. I went to Indian Institute of Mass Communication, by the way, because when I started out in 99, there were very few places you could go to. You could go to Jamia if you wanted to do film and television. That was very tough as well. And if you wanted to do newspapers, which I wanted to do at that time, you had to go to IIMC. And I have to tell you why I think I've been chosen to speak over here, because in that class, I was the only student who really wanted to be a journalist. Everybody else they were waiting, for better things to happen. Everybody was, some people were waiting to go abroad because, you couldn't go directly. Some people were waiting to do their IAS. They hadn't gotten in their first term or whatever, and they were waiting. So IMC was a good place. And I was the only enthusiastic or enthu cutlet who was sitting around there going, I want to be a journalist, and let me figure out what this is. And so much so that even years later, when my first book came out, so everybody thought it was pretty decent. And one of my friends, I was like, so what did you think? And he was like, So I was like, why? Why did you think that of my book? And he said, your problem is that everything's like, oh my God, I love my job. This is so cool. And he's like, I don't feel that way about journalism like you do. So I think that's why when you all are starting out at a time when journalists get so much bad rep, I think they needed an enthu cutlet to come and speak to you about why I think it's really cool as well. Yeah. So I have to tell you, let's start with all the fun stuff first. So I was in my 20s, and suddenly I found myself in Argentina, and I was on assignment. It was pretty cool, actually. It's a country which I would have never gone to otherwise. It was a country whose capital I kind of knew, wasn't sure. Language I definitely didn't speak. It was really, really far away. But I was hanging around the newsroom when my editor came to me and said, get on a flight to Argentina. I was like, why? And it turns out that the story was something, which is the Bofors scandal, which broke when I wasn't even old enough to start reading newspapers. So there I was taking this, the story which I'd barely kind of knew, but wasn't really, getting to grips with. I certainly hadn't done the investigation for that, Maya. I don't know, you're being very kind and calling me investigative journalist, but I hadn't done any investigation. But I was just around, I was enthusiastic enough, and it led to me going to a country which I'd never been before. And most of us kind of know, all that we know about Argentina is that, it's a country where Maradona comes from. But I spent about 15 days there chasing this international criminal who was wanted by the Interpol. And it was really like James Bond, running around hotel rooms with our cameras. Yes, you had a very heavy tripod to carry around, but going to places, trying to make sure you're understood. Because as an Indian journalist, you're never going to have the kind of budgets that BBC journalists have, right? You're never going to have a translator. You have to do your own sign language or whatever. So from knowing just where exactly, kind of knowing where it is on the map, I ended up experiencing a country which I would perhaps even now never go back to. Or I want to tell you about the other time when 2 years before that, I ended up, and this is really special because it doesn't happen now, I ended up going to Dubai and staying in this 7-star hotel. Really? If you think that this happens all the time, Argentina and 7-star, it doesn't. But it happened because the story demanded it. Seriously, the story demanded that I have a 7-star experience in Dubai. What was the story? Well, the story was that Dawood Ibrahim his daughter was getting married, and the only way, yeah, it's true. Again, I was the lucky person in the newsroom. Anyway, so Dawood Ibrahim's daughter was getting married, and they said, you know what, what's really cool? Or maybe I put it in their head, I'm not sure. You have to kind of think of these things. So Dawood Ibrahim's daughter's getting married to Javed Miada's son. So obviously, it's, apparently the intelligence chiefs of all the intelligence agencies in India, everybody was looking at that, like, what's going to happen? Is Dawood going to come or not? So how do you figure that out? And how does the TV channel cover it? So they sent me, again, James Bond, and the camera person, and our job was to look out of the window of that fancy hotel room, enjoy the fancy hotel room, of course, and just wait. There's a lot of waiting in journalism, by the way, not always in 7-star hotels, but that was it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So my job was to, have the camera ready, tell the camera person, no, you can't sleep, and just hang around and, report on the atmospherics in the hotel, who are the guests coming and all of that. Did I see Dawood? Well, I'll tell you that at the end of the talk, okay? I'll tell you what happened at the end of it. But, that's not why I'm a journalist. Because for all those fancy times, there are also really, really awful times, which I'm going to just tell you a little bit about as well. For example, and this happens all the time, this particular instance stays with me because it gets repeated over and over again. It's 44, 45 degrees, it's elections in Gujarat, and I remember sitting on the street, not on the pavement, on the actual tarry street, because we had to be outside that political party's office all day, and just, giving information about what the news is coming in, who's winning the election or not, and eating my lunch on the street. And, some people are quite fascinated by the camera. Not anymore, because now people are on YouTube, so if they like the camera so much, they put themselves on TV. But otherwise, even at that time, people were quite fascinated. So they'd come and say, oh, hello, and they'd see us sitting on the pavement in this heat and sweating, and you're eating your lunch on the street. So, and you know what? I'm telling you that this was 2007 Gujarat elections, but the thing is, it could have happened last week as well. It happens all the time that we are eating lunch from, and when I was writing this book on the prison experiences, one of the things that one of the inmates told me was he found the food really dehumanizing, because they would give it, the food would be in plastic packets and there'd be remnants. I was like, I do that all the time, really. Eat out of polythene bags, the sabzis in a polythene bag, because when you're out there and the story involves you in being out there, it doesn't matter what the segment. You're hungry, you're going to eat, even if you're sweating or whatever, and even if you're sitting on the road, literally on the road and eating, you will still do that. Or the other contrast is, of course, to the really fancy 7-star experience is being, NDTV did this amazing expose against R.K. Anand. He's the guy who used to be, he used to practice law, and he was a politician as well. He is a politician. And NDTV did this expose which showed him taking, colluding with the defense, which is obviously very, very illegal. And we had done a hidden camera. So I was around the newsroom, and my lucky assignment was that while we were showing those pictures of him doing all these bad things, I would be outside his door saying, Mr. Anand, what do you think of you being exposed as a crook? He didn't take that very well, really. So what actually happened was my camera person got slapped around, I got pushed around, our camera got broken, and it was basically a really humiliating experience. And again, that happens a lot. A friend of ours, and that happens all the time as well. You go somewhere, even in the elections things, if you're reporting outside a political party which loses, then party workers get very upset. And the first people, you kill the messenger, basically. The first person you vent your anger at is the reporter, and you start beating them up. It happens all the time. So when those things happen, these not very nice things, or when you can't find a toilet anywhere and you're reporting, you're out there, and even for a basic thing like a clean toilet, especially women, all of us have that problem as well, we need some privacy, and you don't get that, then you're always thinking like, really, this is my job, I'm quite old now, I should be sitting here on the road eating my lunch. At that time, you need to remind yourself why I am a journalist. And for that, and by the way, while I was waiting to speak to you all, I just got another message which said a latest study has found that we journalists are prone to our brains shrinking and our alcoholism and also heart disease. These are some of the benefits of being a journalist, really. Yeah, these are the perks. Also very high divorce rates, apparently. So these are fun things to look forward to. Yeah. So when all of this is happening, then it's good to remind yourself why you're a journalist. And so in the classic modern-day Bible of journalism, which is BuzzFeed, I have prepared a list of top 5 reasons why I am a journalist. Number 5, get paid to experience or get paid to tell the best stories to your friends. After all, that's what we're doing. So even if it is a story of how you got beaten up by R.K. Anand's goons, these are experiences, and they're amazing, I think one of the reasons why journalists write books is because it becomes, everything you do becomes an experience. And you never know the depth and the expanse of your experience. It can be life-altering. If you read books of journalists, people have gone there, people have found their partners, people have gone on assignment to Kosovo and found their children. They've adopted people. So the best thing about it is that you get paid to have an experience. I mean, which other place? I know of people, and I've done it as well, that they were just curious about something. So they've told the editors, I wonder what it is. It'd be great to do a piece on walking up to Siachen. And the thing is, editors like that, you know. Some of them will be like, yeah, okay, I'll pay you to go do that. So you take off, and other people are actually, you know, people pay to do this. But as reporters, you get to do that. It's a job, you get paid. If you can sell an experience that you want to have, you get to do that. Number 4 reason for me is that you meet very, very interesting people. And that is the best thing that can happen. I have to tell you, this week I'm really, really thrilled because I got told off by Rishi Kapoor. Yes. He scolded me. No, he did. But at least it's Rishi Kapoor scolding me. What happened was, you know, as you said, that I do this show called Agenda. And Rajnikant was the big story. So while, you know, when you're doing a show, then you have to think about who will add to my show. And most people in Tamil Nadu didn't want to talk about it because Rajnikant it's very, very contentious. People don't want to take sides with a political party. So we didn't have. So I thought it'd be really fun to have a very big film star talk about whether they, you know, going over to the other side, becoming a politician. So I called up Kiran Kher, and Kiran Kher said, you know, I can't give advice to Rajnikant. So I thought Rishi Kapoor gives advice to everyone. So it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I forgot that, you know, he sleeps. And so somebody just handed me his phone number, and I was so excited that I didn't think about it. I just pressed like ring. And he's like, hello? And I was like, hello. Yeah, fangirl moment. I was like, do you want to? I don't want to do anything. And he cut the phone. And I realized, oh my God, obviously, you don't do that with Rishi Kapoor. You have to write a nice message. And then I wrote him a nice message. And he was like, yes, that's the right etiquette. You should have written me a message first. But that thrilled me because now he's on WhatsApp with me. You know what I mean? First of all, it confirmed it is Rishi Kapoor's number. And, you know, I'm thinking if I like a movie that I really like of his, I'm going to message him and say, hey, well done, huh? So, yeah, I don't think he'd be thrilled. Again, I'm going to be shouted at by him, but that's okay. So, yeah, you meet very, very interesting people. Another, like, I'm just giving you instances of people. I mean, I'm a nerd, so I get very excited about meeting authors. But, for example, like, all of these people, even though I don't cover Bollywood, but, you know, somebody like Manoj Bajpai, I think he's very cerebral as an actor. So when he did Aligarh, I thought he was a good person to talk about 377. So I reached out to him, and it was amazing to be able to meet someone. Of course, you know, there are pitfalls of that as well. There are lots of journalists who interview people and then think they're best friends with them. You know, so they'll be like, yeah, Shah Rukh's my friend. Shah Rukh is not your friend. He is just being nice to you because you're a journalist. But there are lots of people who think that. But I just think that the fact that we have the opportunity to meet all these people is a privilege, and it is really, really one of the cool things about being one. Number 3 for me is every day is a new day. I've come to work thinking, I'm just going to go and go for a boring press conference and then being sent off to cover across the country somewhere. My colleague, who's never covered politics really, Vishnu? Yeah, so he doesn't cover Congress as well. But, you know, the tsunami happened, and suddenly he was told, you're getting on a flight. You're getting on a chopper, and you're going with Sonia Gandhi, and on the way, you can ask her a few questions. And apparently she was like, why aren't you asking me questions? And he was like, okay, I've got to. But I'm just saying that anything could happen, literally. You could be on a flight to Argentina. But I'm just saying that the excitement of not knowing, I know everybody says no job is 9 to 5, right? Even if you're in a corporate world. But the adventure of never knowing what your day is going to be like. And by the way, even if you're in the newsroom and you opt not to be a reporter who's going around in the heat and sitting in 44 degrees, even then it counts because you never know the story that you're going to handle as well. So it's quite exciting. Number 2, of course, for me, is watching history being made. I heard you talking about dating yourself. like if you say something, it really dates you. That happens to me all the time now, because people will say Parliament attack, and I'm like, you know what? When Parliament attack happened, I was standing outside Parliament. But the exciting thing is knowing that what people are going to read about tomorrow, you're right there when it happens. I have to tell you this one particular thing. Of course, none of you young children will know about this, but Y2K was a big fear that was happening around New Year's Eve of 99. Yeah, right. But so it was 99, end of the year, and everybody thought that because the computers were going to go from 99 to 000, it's going to be 2000. That's why they were thinking that the planes were going to fall out of the sky. All kinds of things were going to happen. And so we were all doing those boring stories and hanging around, and then a plane gets hijacked. So in a way, it was like, the one way to look at it, of course, is that some people said, oh my God, I was planning my New Year's Eve party and now I'm going to have work. But for Enthucatlets like me, what was amazing was, as people were doing their, partying or whatever, all of us, the entire newspaper, I was with the Indian Express there, all of us were at the airport and we were watching these people, because IC814 will always be a story. It'll always be the turning point of India's hijack policy or India's hostage policy or the negotiation policy. And all of us were there as reporters watching as the negotiations were going on. As Jaswant Singh was deciding whether to take back these terrorists back to Kandahar or not, all of us were standing outside and reporting on it. As the flight came back in, at the stroke of midnight, but people were saying, oh, Happy New Year, Happy New Year. For us, suddenly, first of all, we didn't know if it was going to be a Happy New Year, but then the negotiation worked and the IC814, the plane came back just before midnight, by the way. And it's so poetic. Think about it. You're on a story and you're like, it's New Year's Eve. They were kidnapped around, the hostage situation happened on Christmas Eve. So like a beautiful, perfect ending to a story on New Year's Eve. That everybody comes home. You get a huge hero story of Devi Sharan, who's the pilot, and how he kind of herded everybody home. And you suddenly feel that you're part of it. Because I remember I was there at Devi Sharan's house all day, because my editor's like, yes, you're going to write that piece about the family getting a... And it's such an intimate moment when people don't know whether the loved one who's stuck in that crisis or hostage situation, whether they're going to come out alive or not. And to be with someone in that moment, it'll always be part of you. It'll always change you. And it is part of history. So watching that, and there are so many things like that, whether it's IC814, whether it's floods, things that people always will talk about, or the parliament attacks, as I said. And I'll always feel that, yes, history was being made, and guess what? I was watching history being made. I was there. I was one of the first witnesses of it, and I wrote a story about it. That's pretty cool. And the number one reason, which sounds a little, well, it sounds a little corny, and for a lot of people, not me, of course, because I came into journalism because I wanted to, for me, the number 5 reason was the number 1 reason, that I wanted to have an experience and be paid for it. But for a lot of people, and it really does happen, and every time you're sitting out there at 44 degrees, this is the thing which changes, is that you make a difference. Now and then, maybe once a year, maybe once in 10 years, but you do. You go to a place and you meet someone whose kid can't have an operation because they're short of 1,000 rupees, or they're short of 12,000 rupees. And you do a story and people listen and they come out to help them. And that person's life changes because of a story that you did. And they keep calling you and telling you that, you helped me out, you changed my life. And I think that's pretty cool. It doesn't happen all the time though. Most of the time you hear a lot of Rishi Kapoors screaming at you. But now and then people do get very, very. So for me, that's the number 1 reason. Before I end, of course, I just want to say that a lot of parents over here, it's very, very, yes, Sonipat is a very scary place, I'm sure, for you. But it's not just Sonipat. Journalism for parents is very, very scary. I can tell you my father has called up Shekhar Gupta and shouted at him because I wasn't home. Because he was like, what kind of an establishment are you running that, my daughter's not home and it's like 12 o'clock at night? But it's also, it really helps to have a journalist kid in the family when, you get a DJB bill, electricity bill of, inflated electricity bill.
Or a passport needs to be
Yeah.
renewed.
It's great to have a connected daughter or son, who can make some calls and make it happen. That's why my dad's kind of happy right now, even though he shouted at that time. Shekhar Gupta will never recover from that shouting that he got. And of course, yeah, I'll end by telling you what happened. Dawood didn't come. If he came in a burqa. We didn't see him. But hey, it made for a good story, and I hope you liked it.
Well, thank you so much, Sinatra, for that fascinating sort of tour de force of your life and also the inspiring experiences that you had. We couldn't have had a better story teller in that, because not only you talked about your own personal life, but also you sort of connected with the aspirations of our young people here today. So I'm really grateful to you for taking the time out. I also want to take a moment to thank all my colleagues who are here, who will join us in this journey. We want to thank the team of staff who put together this event. In particular, I want to recognize Navpreet Gill, the assistant manager of the Jindal School of Journalism and Communication, who worked tirelessly hard to put this event together. Chinky Mittal of the admissions office, also Arjun Puri and other colleagues in the admissions office for leading this effort. As I mentioned before, we will stop at this part of the event and we will move towards a more informal engagement over dinner. But before I do that, I want to present a token of appreciation to Sunetra.